Good morning and good to see everyone. Thank you all for coming. Um, I feel like I just talked to you all not too long ago, so I don't have much more to say other than we're just transitioning from training camp mode to pregame mode and game preparation mode, still existing in a bit of a dual world, and I'm still doing some offense against defense, but then also starting to spend some scripted periods on Kansas State. And I don't have a quarterback declaration. So at that point, we'll just open it up for questions.
First question is from Ben Parker. Ben, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Coach. I just, there's been a lot of, kind of discussion of Ben Yurosek taking that kind of next step and being a breakout player this year potentially for you guys. What areas of his game have you seen the most growth from last year to this year?
Just general knowledge and understanding of the offense, but also of his abilities and being able to add to his route tree. He's a tall, fast kid. But now he's got some subtleties, worked on different routes. Coach Turner, who's obviously coached some great ones, has done a great job with him. And I would even say with Bradley Archer, Bradley Archer's made a huge turn as well. Those two guys have really shown a lot of promise and being, more of those tight ends that we've seen come out of Stanford in the previous years. So really looking forward to those guys. And Lucas Unger has missed some time significantly last year and this year in training camp, but he's now back healthy too. So we've got a healthy room. Feel great about that room. It's an exciting room, but specifically Ben really looks like he's ready to take that next step and be what we need him to be in this offense.
Next question will be from John Platts. John, go ahead.
David, you talked about your enthusiasm for and the depth of your running back room, and we know about your upper class veterans, Austin Jones and Nathaniel Pete. Can you give us a bit of a scouting report on E.J. Smith and on Casey Filkins, sort of the unique assets they would bring that would prompt you to get them on the field more and more?
Well, as you all know, I'm not big on like trying to keep secrets and, play that game with you all or with the opposing team. E.J. Smith has a chance to be a very dynamic football player, both as a running back and as a receiver. Most of his reps last year were at receiver. He played receiver in high school. I think he can do that at a high level in college football, but I also think he can be a high level running back as well. So he's one of those that's going to split some time there. Casey Filkins kind of became a little bit of a star this past week. We put that video out there of him taking a screen to the house. But I mean, here's a guy that's one of the best players in the state of Oregon, led his team to a state championship game, played quarterback, receiver, running back, kind of did it all, which is what we fell in love with. So we have two guys with speed and explosion and versatility that we can use in a variety of ways, both on offense and in return game. We're really, really excited and glad that they're both here.
Next question will be from Troy Clarity. Troy, go ahead.
Yeah, Coach, two things if I can. One, Drake Nugent appeared to be the front runner at the center spot at the end of the spring game. How have things shaped up at that spot since then?
Yeah, Drake Nugent's been awesome. Becoming more and more of a leader up front there for us. He's had a really good training camp. Once again, of the juniors on our offensive line, he's probably one of the least experienced because how much and how well Drew played for us last year. But he's really taken a stranglehold of that center position, and really excited about what he's done all training camp. He's got it between the ears. He's a tough son of a gun. The guys respect him, both his work and his execution. So I feel really good about where he is now starting the season.
Second thing, can you give us an update on the vaccination rate for the entire program?
Last I heard, I believe we're at 85% or a tick higher. I don't know if that's the exact percentage. I think it's really, really close to that. We have a portion of our team that has gone through the proper process with Stanford University. in order to get an exception to not being tested. So we have to have a lot of things in place to ensure the health and safety of our team. And our guys have been great. Our guys have been compliant. One thing I love and have always loved about this locker room is that, we don't let things outside the locker room divide us. So we have most of our guys vaccinated, some of our guys unvaccinated. Everybody knows the rules. Everybody knows what we need to do as far as masking and distancing and things, and our guys are following suit. So I don't anticipate being an issue going forward.
Next question will be from Ron Kroichek. Ron, go ahead.
David, thanks for your time today. Obviously, some significant news yesterday with the Pac-12 alliance with the Big Ten and the ACC. I'm curious your view on what that means for college football, and more specifically, what it means for Stanford, how it might impact the program in the years ahead.
Well, who knows what it's going to mean for college football? Anybody that's got a crystal ball, don't keep secrets. Let us all know. But as far as Stanford is concerned, we're all excited here. We're a national recruiter, and the fact now that we have potential games in the Midwest, potential games on the Atlantic coast, are exciting to who we have on our team, exciting to the people that we're going to recruit. But I think in general, that's why guys get excited for bowl games. It's not just the bowl suite and the bowl gifts and taking a trip someplace. You get a chance to play somebody new. So now to look up and see, wow, any given time we could play somebody in the Big Ten, we could play somebody in the ACC. That's exciting. And I think that is one of the things that I think is going to be really good for college football. Those unexpected matchups or those matchups that you don't have long histories with, but they're exciting. So I think everybody here is fired up and excited about the prospects of what could happen.
Thank you.
Next, we'll go to Jackson Moore. Jackson, go ahead.
Coach, you spoke on your tight ends earlier, and with Fisk doing some D-line work and Higgins doing some receiver work. I've seen some days where it looks like Ben and Bradley are basically getting a lot of one-on-one time. I was curious how valuable you foresee that's been for them this month, those two specifically.
Oh, it's been great. You have two relatively inexperienced players that needed a lot of reps, need a lot of attention. And Coach Turner's been really busy. And those guys have gotten a lot of attention. We still make sure Tucker spends enough time there, but he knows the offense inside and out. He knows what to do. He's learning a lot on the defensive side. We take Tucker here and there. Elijah knows what to do a receiver, but we've been sprinkling him with the tight ends just to make sure he understands what to do there, which he's been a great study there, which I think he's going to be a fun kind of a piece of the puzzle to do a little bit of both. He can put his hand in the dirt and come out and block you at 240 plus pounds. Or he can flex out and run those receiver routes too. So I think the combination of the whole group, you kind of have the whole spectrum of the pure Y blocking tight end that can catch the ball in Tucker to the quasi receiver. Talking about Elijah today, and Elijah's almost got the same dimensions physically as Austin Hooper. Who's a guy who's built a little like Austin Hooper, maybe a little bit smaller, a little bit shorter, but can flex out and run on those receiver routes. So that's a fun group. It's a really fun group, and to have 4 or 5 guys in that room that we think can go out there and make some plays on game day.
Next, we'll go back to John Platts. Go ahead, John.
Yeah, David, following up on that answer, I found it interesting. Thomas Booker earlier in camp, in response to a question, said something like, "Don't call me a defensive end. I played all along the defensive line," and then he added on, "Versatility is the name of the game around here," which I found very interesting. Is that something that you have actively tried to inculcate? I mean, I know you've done it, like, for example, with linebackers inside out, but just guys coming into the program just saying, "Hey, you may not know where you might be optimal. We may not know where you might be optimal, and I ask you to be flexible or to be versatile." Can you take us through your thinking on that?
Sure. It starts with ability. Some guys have the ability to play one position. Some guys have the ability to play multiple. So for a guy like Thomas Booker, who can play the nose, who can play the 3 technique, who can play the 2 gap game, or he can jump out there at defensive end and give you a good base end in the run game and a good pass rushing open side end on 3rd down situations. That's exciting. It's exciting to coaches to be able to know that we can put together a game plan that can put them wherever we want them. That's exciting. Now, for some guys, hey, they don't have that ability, so we put them where they should be. But I've always been of that mind, offense, defense, special teams. It's about the guys and their ability more so than it is about our scheme. Our scheme needs to accentuate what our guys do well and not put them in holes, and put them those pegs in holes. So, Thomas is one of those guys that he's earned the right to say, hey, I'm just a defensive lineman that can play anywhere. I think he's got that ability.
Next, we'll go back to Ron Krojcik. Go ahead, Ron.
David, if I guess just one follow-up to your earlier answer, you mentioned that you're a national recruiter, obviously, at Stanford. Given that, how much do you think the alliance and the potential for those games in the Midwest, Atlantic Coast, as you said, how much can that shape and affect your or help your recruiting?
I think significantly. First of all, and recruiting at Stanford, we all know, is different than every place else. But because of our academic prowess, a lot of people are looking for Stanford. They're trying to get to Stanford from different parts, not only across the world, but in football purposes across the country. And up until this point, we've always been able to say, hey, every other year we're going to be at Notre Dame. And your family, if from the East Coast, that's a great short trip. They can take long trips to see you during the year. But hey, there's going to be a short trip every other year at Notre Dame. And now potentially we could say, hey, it might be more than just one trip every other year. It might be every year, might be maybe twice in a year, to where we're going to be closer to your family. And I think that's attractive to families. That's attractive to our student athletes, prospective student athletes, to know that not only are we going to be on TV every weekend, we're going to be close to them more often, so that their family can take that trip. So I talk about it all the time. I take it very seriously that parents would send their sons across the country to me to be in my care. It's nice to know that, hey, we're going to take a trip to see you maybe a little bit more often than we have in the past.
Thanks.
Next, we'll go over to Scott Reese. Go ahead, Scott.
Hey, David, since we're dabbling in defensive line discussion, obviously Thomas and Dalen, known quantities. Ryan Johnson, been in the program a long time, and you talked about Tucker. And I realize oftentimes you're only going to have two of those guys on the field, but are you comfortable going into the season with essentially a 4-man rotation at that spot, or are there other guys who are playing their way into the discussion?
I'm very comfortable. Many of you know we've survived a lot of difficult situations. The 2015 team that went to and won the Rose Bowl, as well as the Pac-12 championship along the way, we had a 3-man rotation. I wish we had 4. There were some games we felt like we had 2.5, because we had guys kind of coming in just to spell guys. But we played so much nickel that 2 guys played at a time, and thankfully they played extremely well. And then at one point we had 4 guys for a couple games, and we were just in hog heaven. So a 4-man rotation for us, I think, is very good. I think we've got some young guys that could really help us, maybe even during the course of the year, that we'll continue to train and prepare. So hopefully maybe we'll be even deeper than 4. But right now, those 4 guys you mentioned have all been really good in training camp. There's a lot of age and maturity in that room. And at that position, we feel really good about where we are.
Thanks.
Next question is Troy Clardy. Go ahead, Troy.
Yeah, Coach, overall, from an individual standpoint, whose stock would you say has risen the most throughout the course of fall drills to this point?
It's a very well-worded question, to see if I'll answer it, and because I haven't answered questions like that in the past, but I appreciate the effort there, Troy. That's really tough to say. I answer probably more in rooms. I think our defensive back room, I think we felt good about it going into camp, and even with a couple of bumps and bruises, we're pretty excited about that group. I think our defensive line group, Ryan Johnson hasn't played a lot, but had a really good spring. He's come back and had a really good training camp. Dalen Perry right now probably playing his best football that he's played since he's been a Stanford Cardinal. Combine that with Booker, I mean, that makes you feel great about starting the season. Our tight end room, is a young room and an experienced room, and kind of, gosh, if we're going to split time with Tucker, we got to make sure these guys are ready to fill those roles when he's on defense and needs a break. And they've done that. I think the versatility in our receiver room has been exciting too. So I think most of the answers that we've gotten to questions at the beginning of camp have been positive answers. Does that mean we're a dominant football team right now? Absolutely not. It just means we feel better about going into that game, knowing that we don't have some of the potential deficiencies that we're looking at with the guys that have departed.
Next, we'll go over to Ben Parker. Go ahead, Ben.
Hey, Coach, I had a really good conversation with Jordan Fox yesterday, and I asked him which guys he thought were standing out, and the name he gave me was Gabe Reid. So I just wanted to ask you what you're seeing from Gabe and what can we expect to see from him this year?
Yeah, Gabe was a great teammate last year. We had some deficiencies with some injuries at the inside linebacker position with Ricky and Jacob out, and then Tristan Sinclair out. So he made the switch for us and went in there and played pretty well at inside linebacker. And we kept him there through the spring. And after spring, we had conversations, and we know he's better outside, and we feel like we have the depth inside to play. And now with him going back outside, all that experience, all that playmaking has had in the past. And this, I don't know what his career sack number or TFL number is, but I think it's relatively high. The defense hasn't changed, although we've added some things. So he knows it inside now. He's a great communicator. He's playing with a lot of energy and passion. So yeah, I think Gabe has had a great camp. I'm excited for him to have a good year.
Go over to John Platt. Go ahead, John.
Coach, a two-parter, and then I'll put a gag on myself. Second one will be NFL question. The first one is about your quarterbacks, and you've coached quarterbacks in Septembers when they've started 30 games and 20 games, and you've had other years where it's been a low single-digit number of games that they have started. What's different about whether it's Tanner or Jack for you, whether it's practice or in on the sideline in the game, coaching a player who's in start number 2 or 3 or 4 in his career?
Yeah, it's different because there's always that unknown. Starting with Jack in particular, came out a couple years ago, did not play well against UCLA. And then on a couple hours notice, had to jump out there and start against Oregon. I thought he played extremely well. He's coming off a really good spring. He's coming off an even better fall camp. And being able to operate every part of the offense, right? Every single part of it, knows what to do, knows how to do it. Really good at the intermediate passing game, really good at the deep ball game, as well as we saw multiple times against Oregon. Was able to make some big plays in the passing game. Tanner, although he's technically a sophomore, he's the age of a senior. So we got two guys that are older. Neither one is young. Tanner just has less experience in this offense than Jack. But we also believe his ceiling is extremely high. That's why he was one of the top quarterback recruits in America coming out. Size and athleticism and arm strength, and it's got a quick release. Operationally wise, right now, they're very, very even. They're very, very similar. Haven't made a decision yet because the film hasn't told me to make a decision yet. We've been in constant conversations, Coach Tavita Pritchard and I. And we'll see how that goes going forward. And if we end up playing two guys, we end up playing two guys. I don't make as big a deal of it as you all might. But when there's separation, we make a determination on one or the other. If there's no separation, then we'll continue the competition into the season.
Second question is, it looks like Davis Mills is on the verge of being a starter in his rookie year in the NFL, which is, as we're reading, is very, very hard to do for a first-year quarterback in the league. Andrew Luck was a similar one that did that, sort of different circumstances between the two. But have you had any communication with Davis about texting or how he's prepared you and what the NFL is like, and just kind of give us a window into one of your grads getting the premier position in all of sports and maybe being a starter in his first professional game?
I give Davis a lot of credit. He's really poured himself into that opportunity there. Poured himself so much into it that he hasn't responded to text messages from anybody in a long time. was able to talk to him a while ago and gave him a hard time for that, but also praise him for being able to say, hey, you know what, I've got a big opportunity right now and I don't have time to mess with anything other than my potential job right now. So he's been great there. I've communicated, of course, with Pep Hamilton, who's a quarterback coach there, and he's been impressed with Davis's work ethic and his willingness to learn and grow. He's got all the ability, he's got the tools, but that league up there is more than about that. It's about anticipation. It's about trust. It's about handling pressure. And I think every week that he's been there, he's gotten better. Not sure if he's going to start day one, but I think he's off to a very, very promising start. And I was able to DVR the last game. And before I went to bed the other night, I kind of zipped through it and watched, and he looked really good. And I think he's only going to get better. And, what we saw from him as a recruit, what we saw last year, his capabilities were, we believe he's got the talent to be an NFL starter.
Go back to Scott Reese. Go ahead, Scott.
Coach, I got a receiver question, kind of times three. And then I'll put the John Platts gag order on myself as well. Michael Wilson, any update? John Humphreys, you've talked about him as being a star in the making, and I'm just wondering, where he is en route to hopefully reaching that level. And Colby Bowman, a guy who kind of under the radar seems to be making strides. Maybe you could touch on those three.
Yeah, well, starting where you left off there, Colby's had a really good camp. Has kind of worked himself into the mix, both on special teams and on the offensive side. I think he adds depth there. He adds versatility, as you heard earlier. That's big to us. So he doesn't just know one position; he knows all three receiver positions. So in a pinch, he can go out there and perform. Mike Wilson, most likely will miss the first couple of games. We'll see. We'll take it week to week. I know he's determined to come back. I mean, nobody's more determined to make plays for this football team than Mike. And eventually, I know he'll be back out there doing that. We'll see when that's going to happen. And then your other question was
John Humphreys, who now you need even more, right, with Mike out.
Yeah, John missed some time in the offseason, missed a little time in the beginning of training camp. He's really come on strong the last couple of weeks. We believe his ceiling is very high as well. Still a young player, still a lot to learn, but he's really starting to make some plays. As you would figure, the big target that he is, all the experience that he had in high school, all the touchdowns that he scored, that's really starting to show up. So I think as the season progresses, we'll continue to give him more and more, and hopefully put together a really, really exciting receiver group.
Okay, thanks.
I don't see any more hands, so we'll send out audio and video here shortly of today's session. Appreciate everyone joining.